Hey, what's going on, everyone? Check out what's coming up this week on Legacies.
Oh, actually, no.
Are you dead inside?
Yeah, maybe. Not wanting to touch distillate products, right? There seems to be a stigma towards those types of products.
Yeah, love this question. Love talking about distillate.
For anyone that wants to question large-scale cannabis, this PS Cheetah, dude, what the fuck? Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Legacies. I'm your host, Tom Ritchie, joined by Wesley, the Wizard Bowles. You'll notice, for those that have tuned in before, Wes is in a different location. Wes, where the fuck are you? Where in the world is Wesley Bowles?
I'm down here in the middle of nowhere. No, it's Stanton, Virginia. Down here in
Stanton, Virginia. It looks like you're an old-time Americana going on behind there.
Yeah.
Look at all this stuff.
Yeah, this is an old... I'm down here at my dad's house, but this is an old farmhouse that's been in my dad's wife's family for, I believe, since 1917. The farm is older than that, but yeah, they've been in this. Their family's been in this farmhouse since 1917. So it's
weren't you?
Yeah, it's pretty historic.
You were telling me a story when we were in a meeting earlier this week. Something, was it Stonewall Jackson? Something to do with Stonewall Jackson?
Yeah, so there's a house right across the street, or a farmhouse right across the street. I might be misquoting this, but Stonewall Jackson had been at that house, and there was apparently an encampment while they were on their way through, traveling through. There was an encampment of, I think, about 5,000 or 6,000 soldiers that were on this land for a little bit, and during the Civil War, and yeah, it's a pretty historic area. My dad's wife's dad has a collection downstairs of all the memorabilia and stuff that he's found, I guess, in the area, on the plots and stuff like that. He's got bullets and old guns that he's found.
There's probably a treasure trove of stuff available.
Yeah, there's an absolute mountain of stuff here. So yeah, very historic area, and I've been dipping my toes into farm life. So we were wrangling cows. We had to wrangle some cows into some pens a couple days ago, and I've got some footage. Actually, I'll try and when I do
see if you can load it up.
I'll try and overlay some stuff. We whipped the drone out as well and did some flyovers of the entire property. Oh, yeah. So I'll see if I can overlay some of that over this. So,
yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, you weren't using horses to wrangle cows though. You were on quads or something, right?
Yeah, there was a couple of guys on quads, and then me and my dad were there just like opening the gates and stuff like that as these cows whip through. And I'll tell you, man, even the baby cows, as you get 2 feet from them,
they're fucking huge.
They're not something you want to get kicked in the face by, that's for sure. So, but we had, the whole reason we did it is we had, we call her number 9. She's got a tag on her ear, and she's a new mom, and she's an escape artist. She's figured out how to get out of some of these pens. So we had to put her in this isolated pen, and yeah, so she's been teaching her little calf how to escape as well, which is crazy. So they've got to be isolated now, and they'll probably be shipped off to another farm at some point because they can't stay here anymore. But yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, once they figure a way out. I spent my weekends growing up on a dairy farm, so very young age, out in the fields picking rocks. And if anyone that has picked rocks, you know exactly what I'm talking about. For those that don't, it is the most thankless fucking job in the world. Even as a youngster, you follow this wagon and tractor through the field at 5 miles per hour, and as the tilling had happened, it pushes all the rocks up, and not
great.
But anyways, there was always a cow. I don't even know how many head my uncle had. It was a lot. It was like one of the biggest dairy farms in all of southwestern Ontario. The poor farmers, right? The guy had fucking $250,000 combines every year. But anyways, we love the farmers. So I'd asked you, I'm like, have you found any cannabis? I didn't look into it. I mean, we used to work closely with a lot of clients in the US on the Akerna side of things. And I forget who's legal, who's not legal, who has acceptance or decriminalized. And I couldn't remember where Virginia sat. And I'm like, have you found any cannabis yet? And you're like, God, no, I wasn't going to risk bringing it over. I'm like, well, of course not. I would fucking think that. But then I had to do a quick Google search to understand where the state of Virginia stood on it. So possession's okay up to an ounce, I understand, but there's no dispensaries. There's no legal framework for it.
It's kind of similar to early days Canada. Like it's medically, there's some medical stuff going on. You're okay to possess it, but there's nowhere to buy it. Like you said, there's no no
Well,
dispensaries.
you're okay
or
to
anything
possess
like
it depending who you get. So again, back to early days Canada, I remember traveling. I had my MMAR, I had a pink slip. I could travel with, God, I think it was just shy of a pound of weed. And I would just because I could. And in the airport, there was a lot of stink faces. They didn't know what to think of it. You'd get your paperwork out. Some understood it, some didn't. But in the state of Virginia or any of these states that have not developed some sort of framework for it, you get that in law enforcement. Some are okay, some aren't. They don't know necessarily how to treat it, right?
Yeah, it's crazy too because we take for granted how widespread cannabis is up there. Not just the product itself, but we say that there's still a long way to go with knowledge and consumer knowledge and stuff like that and awareness. And I get down here, and obviously I've talked to new people since I've been down here, and obviously they ask, what do I do? And you know, they're always very interested in, holy crap, how does that all work? And then you start talking to them about cannabis itself, and the knowledge level is just non-existent. It's you know, it's crazy, right? Like even common things like THC and CBD, like those, the knowledge of that just does not exist here from the people that I've talked to, right? And these are your average consumer who is interested in it, but you know, does that knowledge just doesn't exist. I went jamming with my dad with a couple of guys in their garage last night, and the guy there whipped out a small bag that he had of just some personal stuff that I think his son or whatever had given to him, and you know, it's shitty barn dope, and you just take for granted, you know, what we have now. It's crazy. So, but
well, it kind of underscores the point of what we've been saying for the longest time, is that regulated markets allow for education, and that's good and bad, right? So it's not necessarily to draw new consumers in. I mean, God, every company would love that, you know, that's operating and spending millions of dollars to do that, but it helps dispel rumors and myths. But really what it does is it destigmatizes it just enough that you can have a conversation, and individuals that you're having those conversations with, they're not throwing up walls and, oh, cannabis is devil's lettuce, it just leads to the gateway drug and leads to all these things. And there's more evidence coming out every day. I mean, there's tons of studies, tons of reports. And I think in the States, the one thing that I do see is that for the states that are regulated, they are, I don't even know, I want to use the term legal because federally it's still illegal.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of great universities and medical centers, scientists that now have the ability that they can study it. And it relates to even what, like, I'd love to get one of these cannabis scientists on. We see them on the different Instagram accounts. We need to reach out to one because I've been struggling with this quite a bit lately. So one, no cannabis really, other than probably last night. You got some barn weed. Your dreams must have come back in full force with complete vividness, I would assume.
No, actually. No.
Are you dead inside?
Yeah, maybe. No, my dreams didn't come back or haven't come back yet.
Okay. You must have been loaded up enough.
I don't know. Maybe it's just the farm lifestyle and stuff. I've actually been sleeping great, and that's what I used it for back home was sleeping, right? That's the main piece. But no, it's not. No vivid dreams back again. That's strange though. Until you mentioned that, I didn't even think of it.
It could be. I mean, you're doing some farm work now. Obviously, taking a little bit of break from high flyer as much as you can. We're trying to get away from it. I know you were not wired that way, but the reason I mention it is I'm struggling right now, not with cannabis use, but truly understanding. So I'm getting up in age. We know, like anyone that knows me knows, I've been hard on my body growing up, right? So sports led to back surgery. I mean, hell, I was almost killed playing hockey when I was 12 years old. So a lifetime of opioids, a lifetime of anti-inflammatories and various different treatments. And cannabis has helped. I mean, 10 plus years, I've not touched an opioid. I barely take ibuprofen anymore. But what I notice is, and again, I don't know if it's age or what, but my joints are starting to hurt more. You know, I wake up in pain. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And some weeks, some days, like this week has been hell. It's like, well, there's a new pain. Why do I have a new pain? What the fuck is going on? And I'm starting to wonder, this is why I really want to talk to a cannabis scientist, not a doctor about it. I mean, I could call Ira, I could call Mike Hart and discuss this with him, but I want to understand clinically, is there any relation between cannabis and your REM sleep and the body's ability? I know there is between cannabis and REM, but when you're not entering that REM state, if it's not allowing your body to heal, So this has set me on this huge path this week of, and my wife, holistic nutritionist, like, dude, I take so many different supplements, but the problem is you need a marker. You need to understand where your starting point is. Now, go to a family practitioner here in Ontario, ask for blood work just to ask for blood work, and they look at you like you're asking for them to pay for it.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking brutal. So you need a starting point. You need to understand, where am I? Then I got into Joe Rogan and Gary Brecka. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Gary Brecka. He's loved and hated, I guess. He's basically a biohacker. Like, this guy, 20 years in the insurance field, studying medical certificates and trying to understand when someone would die, the mortality rates of individuals. And he could predict when someone's going to die within a month. Like, seriously, there's evidence to prove that he was able to predict someone will die within this month based on their medical exams. And that's what all he did, was read thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of medical documents. So this guy he's developed some different programs and stuff, but basically he's like, you need a swab. You need to understand where your markers are so that the vast majority of everything going on is nutrition. And the nutrition that we get is so bastardized these days. Like, I spent 8 years vegan diet. Before that, 6-7 years as a vegetarian. I've gone full back into carnivore diet to try and understand, like, am I missing something? Am I missing some sort of nutrition?
Yeah. And
I'm coming back now to what Gary is saying and going, well, fuck, it's right. Like, he's right. Like, you need a starting point. So, any of our audience that's ever, looked into this, you understand the relation between cannabis and pain. Is it just getting old? I don't know. I'd love to hear your comments, because I'm fucked sometimes. Like, it's people looking, they're like, oh, you look healthy. Yeah, well, I've got a 1990 Nissan too, and it looks great on the outside, but you beat on that car, it ain't coming back. You're going to have to spend some money on it, right?
Yeah. Surface level.
It's so. Anyways, I wasn't sure if you had heard of Gary Brecka, because I know that you get sometimes down rabbit holes with Joe Rogan podcasts and that sort of thing. And I'm telling you, like, I'm looking at now, I'm not selling the farm to go and subscribe and buy everything he has, but, hydrogenated water, using hydrogen, right? I don't know how much the swab test costs, but hey, sign me up. Find out where my markers are. What vitamins or minerals am I lacking? Because we just throw at it, right? Oh, I'm not feeling good. I'm going to take a multi. Oh, a multi. I mean, half the fucking multis are shit. So it's not unlike what we experience in the cannabis industry, right? You've got certain weed built for certain people and they like it, and other ones, they'll only living soil, only craft, only this, right? And there is a plethora of vitamins and minerals available to individuals out there, and it doesn't help. I mean, that's the part. It's like selection, right? There's too much fucking information. We begged for information for years.
Yep.
Created a means to be able to get it. Got something on my mic. And now you go into, like, dog food. I got the boys in studio today, so we could hear something. They could try and get on my lap shortly. Who knows? But go and shop for dog food. It's the most frustrating fucking, and not just dog food, pet food, period. Used to be 6 choices. Your dog's overweight, right? I don't know. I'm using obviously 6 choices. There was more, but dog's overweight. Your dog's a puppy. Your dog's this. Okay, you put them on this one, this one, this one. We've got the pickiest little assholes in the world that I think they just like variety. But you go in and you're like, oh, well, they were on grain free. Now they can't take full grain. No, there was this, and there's just too much fucking selection. Like, you can't make choices when there's so much selection. Bringing that to dispensaries, actually, we should talk about that, because OCS has just announced. So you go into a dispensary, I'm fucking overwhelmed. I know the brands. We spend countless hours every day, not week, every day, understanding the brands in the market. Who are they owned by? Which parent companies, etc. Looking at websites, looking at their product selections. And we think we know it. Okay, we want to try that. We go into a dispensary, we're like, wow, holy fuck, it's too much. I don't know what I want. Not to ask you a question, you're fucked.
Not to mention those ones where you walk in and all you have is the menu to go off of, right?
Yeah.
Those are
It's tough, man. But OCS has just announced they're going to throttle back on the amount of SKUs they're carrying. I don't know what they're going to use.
Not even by 100 SKUs or anything, like thousands.
thousands. I thought I had caught somewhere, and I guess we've got a good relationship now with the OCS. Amanda, thank you very much for responding to our questions. She's always great. What is her actual position with the OCS? Do you know?
I believe she's communications manager. Sorry, Amanda, if I'm quoting that. I'll take a look at that, but I believe it's communications manager. Yeah.
Having this lifeline into OCS and quick responses, incredible, but helps us to clarify and understand certain things. But yeah, I thought they only carried for general listings 700 SKUs, which is still a lot. Don't get me wrong, that's still a lot. But it sounds like there's actually more. I don't know. So if they're going to whittle that back, which I would assume they have to, because again, we have access to analytics tools and we look at some, and when you have 0.04% market share in a certain category, what are you doing?
Yeah, like their warehouses are carrying like similar number of SKUs as fucking Costco's. Like it's insane.
If it was my warehouse as a private company, I'd be kicking some of those brands to the curb. I'm sorry to these brands that exist. But I'd be like, look, you don't sell, you don't market, you don't work with your retailers, you don't promote to the consumer. I can't promote to the consumer. Bull fucking shit. There are ways to do it. Get creative, figure it out, read the fucking regulations for a change. How many brands have we been on calls with where we say you can and can't do this? And they're like, really? You spend millions to come into the market.
I guess one of the other things that, could help is giving the LPs the ability to sell direct to dispensaries.
Oh, well, I mean, there's that. I get our situation in Ontario, and there's other provinces that are different as well. Their distribution models are different, but that creates its own set of headaches, right? Because you need some sort of distributor. There has to be. Otherwise, you've got all these packages arriving constantly, and you've got a one-person staffed dispensary in some cases, and now the fucking buzzer's going off for delivery every 20 minutes. That doesn't work either.
I do like Crystal Cure's model. Jonathan Wilson talked about it, where they've got some SKUs that they reserve for their farm gate. That's where they live. That's where those are sold, and then they have their main ones that they distribute out to.
Out there.
And there's others. That's a great model as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's others that do that. Direct to dispensary. I know BC has that set up. I think Alberta has it set up like that. But there's still challenges. There's still certain challenges, obviously. So, I mean, this is kind of a signal to those brands that if you're not performing, it's going to get very competitive to have a listing within Ontario, I think. And when did they announce they're going to be doing this? Do you recall?
This is over from the StratCann article. Again, this news came from StratCann, but they said over the next year and a half. So it's not like a month deadline or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Still, realistically, for that many SKUs, a year and a half is not that long. Like that's still a short amount of time to be axing all those SKUs. Now, I assume a lot of those will be transitioned, not just completely axed, they'll be transitioned to the flow-through program, if I understand this correctly.
I would assume that most are. I mean, you still have to convince the OCS why your brand or product should be carried. And it's not, that your stories need to change. Look at Astro Boys, right? Not to just blow smoke up Jazz's ass. I mean, he's a great guy and the great product launch, but he got 8 listings, 8 general listings. So you need to have a story. You need to communicate to the OCS how you will market and support your retailers. If I'm a retailer, I'll carry products for various reasons. One, I can get behind it. It's a fucking great product. My consumers are going to be happy. The other side of that would be distribution, mass communication, which is they do a really fucking good job of marketing. Who are they marketing to? Doesn't matter. Get it out there. Become present in every area you can, but also having support materials available. There's so many things that you can do to prove why you should be on OCS listings. Lots of reasons, but
yeah, I mean, number one would be have a nice, complete, up-to-date website with all your information on there. Like, I don't know how many brands I've seen complain about, marketing regulations and stuff like that. But then you go to their website and it's like you've got nothing on here. There's nothing or your website hasn't been updated in a year and a half, right? Like
or you haven't changed the social links on them from the standard out of the box. Yeah, we could go on and on. I mean, this is an area we spend a lot of time in. But anyways. And more news too in terms of change potentially coming is Health Canada announcing that they're creating. They've talked about this, I think, since 2019. So it was the Cannabis Health Product Coalition had been tabling this and really driving that. Look, CBD should not need the oversight of a health practitioner. It just shouldn't, which has created so many bottlenecks, but also so many areas that these brands struggle, especially, we've talked with Shauna Levy, Magid Mercer, heavy CBD products. There's other ones, Wildwood Labs. They've been really good, but they only do a full spectrum CBD hemp derived product. The packages have great big THC logos on them. I get there could be a small minor amount of THC, but come on, it's these brands are going to struggle. They just won't exist. So thank God, Health Canada. I think it's within a year, or by end of year, that they're going to be tabling what their recommendations are.
Yeah, I'll take a look here. I think it's they've been working on the proposal since 2019. It says. I'm not sure. I have to.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, the thing is, you want to check it out. Obviously, it's available. StratCann, that's our go-to. we do have David Brown coming on the show. David, fucking A, right?
Yeah,
finally.
About time.
Yeah. And we'll see if we can. I just love connecting with him. So knowledgeable. Follow him on X. You want to see David? Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's all I'll say.
There's the LinkedIn David. There's the LinkedIn David, and then there's
LinkedIn,
the Twitter David.
And StratCann, and then there's the X David. Completely different in some cases. I love it. I think that I got down the rabbit hole, as I mentioned, with X. You had strongly recommended I stay away from X for quite some time, and I took your advice. And then all craziness broke loose in the U.S. with U.S. politics. And
to be clear, yeah, I advise you to stay away from it, not because it's a great resource, but more so because it's overwhelming the amount of, like, not to keep going back to like the whole Trump assassination, all the news going on in the States, but there was information coming out on that platform minute by minute, hours before it was coming out on mainstream media. Again, some of it bullshit, but a lot of the stuff that was verified later was there minutes after it was all happening. It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy, but there's a lot on there.
What I do know, at least, in my mature years, is I won't take everything at face value. I need to GPS coordinate that, right? It's got to be triangulated. I need 3 points of data to understand, is this fact or fiction? And some I just brush off, but other ones, I mean, the evidence comes out. I think the most startling and shocking one for me as of recent, and not to dwell into the US, maybe we need to take Legacies to the US now too, I think, is about the potential election fraud in 2020, where, they're like, it happened, everyone, it kind of just, like everything, died down, went by the wayside, and then I forget who it was. I don't know if it was DOJ or who started reporting, actually, so when Las Vegas stopped counting votes, all of a sudden, there was a huge spike of 140,000 that came in, all in favor of Biden, not one Republican vote, which has never happened ever in the history of an election. And it like they were neck and neck. And then all of a sudden it spiked. Again, I look at that and I go, interesting. For some US American citizens, they look at that as, what the fuck? We told you, we knew it was happening, and here's evidence, and what will come of it? I don't fucking know.
Well, what's happening in Venezuela this week is a prime example of what could happen. Like, not
only in the US could that happen, it could happen in Canada. I mean,
if you're not up to date on what's happening in Venezuela right now, you should definitely take a look.
It's not on mainstream media. It's not,
and that's what's shocking is that, they've been a socialist country for the last, I think, I'm going to quote this wrong, but it's been like 20 years, I think.
It's been a long time. Let's say that.
Yeah. Anyway, somehow this new dictator during the election got 139% of the vote. That's how far off the vote tallies were.
My math don't work well, but something's not right there. Yeah,
but the country has erupted, and it's gotten to the point where not only the citizens are rioting and it's the military and the police.
Oh, the military's backed them now
They've
too.
started taking their uniforms off and going, like,
Yeah.
it's nuts. It's absolutely
crazy. And now they're finding warehouses full of medications and food and everything that they've been rationing out to the. Come on. But there's been some recent news, I mean, to bring it back to Canada, that, you know, like, what in the fuck is going on? I'll admit, you know, when Trudeau first ran, you know, I believed in a lot of things that he was saying, and I voted Trudeau first time through, not second time through. And I certainly do not support any of the bullshit that has gone on under the Liberal Party. I'll say his leadership for right now, because there are, in, you know, various areas throughout Canada, there are good Liberal leaders. But, you know, what now? Oh, inflation's out of control. You can't afford anything. Here's a 30-year mortgage. What the fuck? Like, as an investor in real estate, when I was younger, I would have looked at a 30-year mortgage and went, fucking sign me up. The more the merrier, right? The more I can get of those and roll my equity and buy more property, but this is, I've said that, you've heard me say this before, not on the podcast or anything, but I've said this before. We will become Germany when it comes to our mortgages, which is, you don't ever, they're rent. It's rent. Like, you can't pay those off. They are inherited and passed down from generation to generation. I don't know if it's still the same, but I know 5-10 years ago, it was certainly like that. This is what's going to come in Canada. People won't be able to pay their mortgages off. We have the highest household debt out of every country, even higher than the fucking US, which is insane. What are we buying?
Tom, I'm down here in, and again, there's still, you know, there's definitely some issues with the states and stuff when in regards to household income and money and stuff like that. But I'm in Walmart's here. I'm in just going out for grabbing a bite at fast food or whatever. And it's shocking how much different it is, how cheap it is compared to up there. I went and bought, this might be a very oversimplified example, but we needed 3 heads of lettuce for dinner. And I went out to Walmart and I grabbed 3 heads of lettuce in a single package. It cost me $3. $3. And I was comparing that, and I was going, if I was at Fortino's or I was at, you know, Sobeys back home, this would have been a $6, $7, $9 bag of lettuce.
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, you're saying Fortino's, like, they're not Walmart's, but yes, you're right.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
100%. Like, the food is out of control. Everything's out of fucking control, man. It's just, I'm dreading. I said this to Tanya the other night. I'm monitoring, and you got me on Ecobee quite a while back. I've got to go in and look. I need to see how often my AC's running. It's been a hot summer. Don't get me wrong. The conspiracy side of me, or conspiracist side of me, thinks you weather manipulating fucks are fucking with everything, driving our affordability down and making it so it's hotter. I need to run so that Hydro One and these hydro companies can just, you know, line their pockets even more. But I'm now paying attention, you know, get up early, AC's running, check, AC's running, do this, AC's running. The fucking AC is running nonstop. I can't get my house down below 72. Like, it'll just run nonstop. It won't. So I said to Daniel, I'm like, I don't even want to see the fucking hydro bill. I'm going to put $500 on it now. I don't even want to look at it, because chances are it's going to be, and I'm not joking, it'll probably be $400 or $500. Like, what in the fuck is going on?
Disgusting.
Yeah, my city, I still think stupidly sold hydro. So our hydro company used to be in our own municipality. They sold it to Hydro One with a sweetheart deal, right? Oh, we're not going to raise for 3 years. We're not going to, I'm like, any gullible motherfucker that thinks that that's not going to shoot up the second that fucking contract ends, you're done. And it did. But thank you, Justin Trudeau, for sending me my carbon tax credit. Is that what it is? What the fuck is that?
Oh, did you actually get that?
I don't know. I think Tanya got one. I don't know what I get. Politics. Yeah. Government. It just drives me fucking insane anymore. What in the fuck is going on?
Yeah, the world's pretty doom and gloom at the moment, but
I don't want to be a doom and gloom guy. Listen, let's move on to something more refreshing. So you can't purchase any legal product in Virginia, but and I think you've talked about this before. So I got my Toki vape pen. I haven't fully experienced it, so I'm not going to say yes, no to it. I can tell you that I love it so far, but I haven't experienced it as I bought it for the dabbing, right? I wanted to dab with it. And I'm a bit of an idiot because I don't read the fucking manual ever. I don't. You know this. You're a guy. I mean,
yeah. I do the same.
There's a reason we don't do it, right? So, anyways, I did figure out all the temperature settings, all this type of thing. I did try rosin de caps, and I think you've tried that before.
I finished that, but yeah,
the jam, So they live resin jam. I fucked up somehow. I did get a dab out of it, but it's not like a quick hit like you would in a dab rig, but the flavor was incredible. So I'm like, I don't know. I've never dabbed before, right? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I've tried concentrates and stuff, but not like this. And I'm like, I feel like I'm, getting up there. I'm buzzed, but not crazy. And then we also had a sample of rosin de caps, the live resin vape cart. So I'm like, oh yeah, I can. So I screw that in and take a few hits of that as well. And that was good. Like I was good. Like I wasn't stupid.
On the Toki, did you have it on the lower temp setting or the higher temp setting?
I think I had it. I tried all of them. And where I think I fucked up was once I get fully understanding of the device, I'll show it, and maybe we can even work something out with Toki where we can get people some sort of discount or something. What has come so far, packaging's great. It's a great quality product, I can tell you that. But the dab cart for it has 3 pieces, and you unscrew the nail, the top, and then it has to go in the quartz cup, I guess, with the heater in the bottom. Well, it's tough for me with my old eyes. I'm like looking at it going, is it in on the coils? I can't tell. So I think I got some of it on the walls of the of the little container rather than right on the coils. So it took some time for it to dissipate, like for it to heat up and me to actually get the hits off of it. But the flavor was, I think it was Point Break by Rosin de Cap. Wow.
Yeah, I remember loving the flavor on that as well. But I also remember hitting me instantly on that dab rig. Like,
it'd be completely different.
Before I even stood up to go back to my room, like I was instantly. Instantly.
Well, and that's why I need to go full dab. But like terps on that you'll always find this obviously in live resin and jams and rosins and butters, is that your terps are going to be higher. 100% they're going to be higher. And these were like 7+% terps, I think. But great taste, great flavor, great product so far. I just need to figure out how to do the dab side of it. If you were purchasing it to use it as your 510 battery, it's a no-brainer. Like it just feels perfect in the hand. It has light response. You can tell what's going on with it. But anyways, we'll do a proper review of it at some point.
I'll bring my dab rig when we go up north and we can do a comparison.
There we go. We'll figure that out. And speaking of that, so we're out to ish for a week, but right before that, the most anticipated event of the summer, if there was ever a cannabis event fit for the summer, our friends over at GanjaGlam have done it. They figured it out, right? Not a typical sampling event. This is Lake and Bake, baby. Lake and Bake. And I'm excited for it. I'm still trying to figure out how the fuck I'm going to pull off getting to the event and then leaving the next day for vacation, because I've got a lot of shit to pack. I go one place for a day and it's like suitcase and everything.
Oh, is that the timeline? Is it right after that? I didn't realize
it's the
it was
day
right
after that. Yeah, I'm like, holy fuck, how am I doing this? But anyways, so Lake and Bake, August 17th at Toronto Harbor Cruise. There's a tailgate party right before that. On the high flyer side, we're media sponsors. Obviously, we've been promoting this a little bit and we want to do more. So what a cool event though. A harbor cruise for 4 hours plus 2 hours of tailgating. And then I think Brandon has something planned for after as well. But
yeah, there's something on Toronto Beach or something like that. There's an after party or something like that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's official with the Lake and Bake and GanjaGlam crew, but because I think they have to be careful of that. But Lake and Bake, August 17th, you need to be there. We've worked with the crew over there. Sign up, use code Legacies, get 25% off tickets. I can tell you that tickets are going quick. I was in looking this morning. All the early birds are sold out. The bud tender ones are sold out as well. Doesn't mean you can't attend. It's just there's certain ones that were resigned or reserved for bud tenders with cancel, different color bracelets, so that Everyone knows what's going on. There's brands present, and some wicked brands like Exca is going to be there, Retro Haze, Cactus, Montrose. God, these are just off the top of my head. There's our boy Mo's going to be there, Legacy Market.
Yep.
So anyways, great brands. It's a party. There's DJs. DJ Dopey's going to be there. I think Brandon's even spinning potentially. It's rain or shine. You know, the River Gambler, they've got that retractable bimini top.
Yep.
Wicked. Like, if there's ever a summer cannabis event, I think this one makes the most sense. Like,
absolutely,
how else you do it? Other than, of course, Canada Golf Classic, which is, you know, right around the same time out in Vancouver. But I mean, for those that want to party in Toronto, use code Legacies, 25% off. Get the tickets while you can, because they will be gone soon. I know it. They're going to be sold out.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Now, if I could just figure out the craziness, I'm going to have to pack maybe the whole week before. And I got your chariot. It's all shined up. When you come down to see us. You're on mute. I think you're on mute.
Oh, hope you're ready for me to wrap that thing around the tree. I'm just saying.
There's no trees in the fucking lake, man. I can tell you.
I'll find one.
Well, I can tell you that. So I had a pair of Wave Runners last summer, and I rented them out. I'm like, fuck, I don't use them enough. I'll rent them out. First fucking rental, someone wrecked them. So he bought them. I'm very choosy, right? Anyways, so I'm like, I don't really need to. So when I sold those, I bought a super high output one. And the thing is, it's fucking stupid fast, like scary fast. I remember last year, Ashen wasn't technically of age, but I still let him ride it on a smaller lake. And I'm like, just keep it below 40. He's like, yeah, no problem. I'm on the dock, and he's burning around a little bit. And then all of a sudden I hear him.
Just
I'm like, oh my God, he's fucking gone. I'm like, dude, I told you, I wish there was some way I could put a governor or something on it. But I mean, he's 16 now. He's been behind the wheel of the RX-8 so far. He's not getting behind the wheel of the 300 for quite some time. I can tell you that.
No, imagine not.
It's not fucking happening. But anyways, I mean, we were talking about this last week or the week before. I'm like, you know, I got a K car. This kid gets to drive fucking, you know, they're not the most fancy and glorious sports cars, but they're sports cars.
Right.
You know, and I'm not well off by any means, but I like them to remain in the shape and condition they are.
No kidding.
Anyways, I'm super excited to have Adam Coates on today from Decibel.
Decibel, GeneralAdmission.
Yeah. Well, so under their brand, I mean, they've got GeneralAdmission, they've got Vox Vapes, they've got and a relaunch, which I want to understand, of Qwest. So, you know, and some rumors that I want to dispel as well about, you know, and I told Adam this when we met with him. I'm like, are you the reason there's this whole fuck corporate cannabis, right? We're going to get into that. We need to talk about that, because I think that our audience fully needs to understand, you know, there's, you know, different strokes for different folks, right? And when it comes to distribution, I really want to understand, because anytime we've ever looked at any analytics, GeneralAdmission's top of the charts. They have distribution. How did they achieve it? I guess we'll find out when Adam joins us right after this break. All right, welcome back, everyone. We're joined by Adam Coates, Chief Revenue Officer of Decibel. Adam, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Welcome to Legacies. I'm great. I'm
excited for this. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller, so to say.
Fucking hey now. It's like Howard Stern. Look, I was a little crotchety earlier. As you know, Wes and I record our pre-show, and then we take a break and we bring our guests in. And I was just U.S. politics and all this shit, stuff fucking bugging me, man. Anyways, I'm glad to have you here because we get to dig into Decibel. We've seen the great success of the various brands that are in market and distribution. We want to get into all that. But first, tell us, how does one become the Chief Revenue Officer of a cannabis company? Let's start with that.
Well, the true answer is I did exactly what they tell you not to say, is you get into business with your best friend. And I actually have to do that twice in 2018. So my two best buddies from back home, I ended up, starting a business with one and joining a business in another. So, a bit of an interesting path. I mean, I kind of came from one of the more typical backgrounds that you saw in the early days of cannabis. I worked for a big beer company, Anheuser-Busch InBev. I started with them right out of school, had, a great career, with them and great career path. I was always had in my mind doing something more entrepreneurial, doing something for myself, as opposed to executing someone else's brand plan. Can I create one of my own and sort of put my money where my mouth is, so to speak? And so in summer of 2017, left the beer world, started exploring the cannabis world, did some work with a kind of startup in the cannabis space that got me at least scratching the surface of what cannabis was, building the network, trying to understand it a little bit more. And then had a good friend who was starting up this thing called Wesley, and I think they had an investor presentation and maybe a little bit of starting money. And they were sort of investment banking, private equity type guys, and they needed somebody with CPG experience who they knew and knew would work hard. And, next thing I know, I'm in Calgary in a burnt out oil and gas office. I showed up, my buddy and his partner weren't even there. I was thinking to myself, like, what the hell did I get myself into? And it was kind of poetic looking back at it. There was 4 founders that I joined. So I was the first employee of this business called Wesley. And really it was kind of the 2 active, founders that it was the 3 of us. We were sitting around a table and figuring out how the hell we were going to do this thing. We had the grand vision of creating a vertically integrated business and doing a whole bunch of things in every aspect of it, and starting retail and manufacturing and cultivation and doing all the things, and went out and started raising money and started building a business. And so that's how I got into that. So really, I think leaning into my kind of regulated consumer goods experience in the beer world. And very quickly, I figured out that while there are similarities in terms of how beer is distributed in Canada, and yeah, you can argue that there are some, deeper similarities within the product itself, but cannabis is a different animal. The industry is a different animal. And where we're at, going through the hype of 2018 and 2019 to some very low lows and some very high highs. And it's been a roller coaster, but that's kind of how I found myself in the business here. And in terms of chief revenue officer, I think I've held 2 or 3 different titles, all sort of similar in nature. Heading up sort of at points brand marketing, business development. When you're doing a startup, it's you kind of jack of all trades, did lots of corporate communication stuff. I set up and, helped hire some of the first people and getting our first HR system set up. So and then getting into, what products we're going to have, what our retail concept was going to look like, what brands and how our sales strategy was going to work. So really kind of commercially focused, but in this business and in startups, you end up doing a whole lot. And especially for myself, being the first employee of one side of Decibel, because Decibel was created when Wesley and WeGrow came together in the end of 2019. And then we rebranded under one name, which was Decibel. So it's been quite a journey.
Wow. That's a lot. And I'm glad to hear it, because I think you touched on a few things that, one of the reasons that we wanted, just based on our meeting, you're a cool guy and we wanted to be able to bring you on the show and just chat about this. But, part of the rumor and the mistruths about some of the air quote corporate cannabis. And I asked you straight up in the call, I'm like, hold on a second. Are you the reason this whole fuck corporate cannabis exists? And you joked about it and you're like, you need to understand all these various facets that make up a corporation such as Decibel. So thank you for the history. That helps us to understand the craziness and why you would want to be here. There's a few pieces I need to pull on in there. So one, you touched on, your experience in BevAlc and the CPG, because we see this a lot. Cannabis is not CPG. It's not the same. And we would argue there's a lot of similarities. Yes, distribution is different. The market is still very young. This industry, 7 years in, we don't have anything figured out. We think that we do. And as you know, probably on a daily basis, all those plans go to hell because something interjects or changes those plans. But I love that you've shared the story of how Decibel became Decibel, because a lot just look at, well, you've got GeneralAdmission, you've got Vox, you've got Qwest, look at this great big corporate. They're all Bay Street financiers that came in, and no, you had to really figure shit out at the beginning, right? You're talking about sitting around the table. How are we going to do this? How are we going to build a vertically integrated a business? And you're considering retail and the marketing side of things. But then in the background, you still have, I mean, fuck, you've got to grow cannabis still, right? Like you still have to produce it. What has been the biggest challenge that you feel personally between your experience in CPG and BevAlch and trying to transfer that skill set or that knowledge into cannabis? Where's the divide there?
Yeah, really good question. I would say that while I agree with you, cannabis is not CPG, I would add a word to it, yet. And it has to get there.
Yeah.
But when we really look at the landscape of where we're at today, 5, 6, 7 years into this thing, there really aren't many, if any, true sort of established brands. Now, look, GeneralAdmission, we're very proud of what we've done with GeneralAdmission. By most sort of metrics, it's still the number one brand in the country and has been for a while. But I'm not so ahead of myself, and I think I have enough experience in this industry to say that that top spot is fragile. And, you know, the true element of brand, if you compare it to a Coca-Cola, a Google, a Budweiser, whatever sort of industry you want to get into, we're not there yet. We just aren't. It's too susceptible to other factors that other established brands aren't there yet. I think there's some brands out there that are getting close. But if we really take the long-term perspective and look outside of cannabis, we still have a lot of work to go as an industry. And I think there's many, many things that went wrong in cannabis, and many things that a lot of CPG professionals who came into cannabis got wrong right out of the gate. And one of those things was this idea of mass adoption very, very quickly. And I think a lot of early LPs, especially the big ones who raised an enormous amount of money, they were so focused on that new consumer, on that cannabis consumer who didn't exist yet, who didn't consume cannabis. And that was the whole pitch, right? In investor meetings and to the banks and all this during the hype is, hey, we've got consumption rates at like whatever it was, 20, 25, 30%, whatever number is low. Alcohol is at like 80%. And so we're going to bring that 60% of legal consuming adults up to in cannabis and look at all this opportunity. So we're going to target all our products there. Meanwhile, they all forgot about the people who are actually buying and using cannabis. And really that was like a massive shift that has happened now. And I think more companies more understand that, not to ignore sort of that new consumer. It's important. But if you think about cannabis compared to like beer, where my experience is cannabis, you get your first experience of cannabis not by going into a store. You get it from your brother, your buddy, your cool uncle, whatever it is. And you get introduced to it that way, somebody who's consumed in the past. And that's your sort of introduction to it. Whereas, yeah, alcohol, you can kind of have that similar experience where you have to, you know, get somebody to go to the store for you, but it's a very different thing. Right. And so, you know, I think what we did really well was we understood the consumer and who's buying. And one of the big reasons for that was we actually owned retail first. So we started this little retail business called Prairie Records, still super proud of it. We've since sold it off to the Fiki company, but that was our first sort of foray into the world and introducing ourselves with doing something very different than all the others. Right. We're competing in, you know, a very competitive industry right now. Decibel sits kind of like in the top 5 from a market share perspective, kind of in oscillating between, you know, 3rd, 4th, or 5th at this point. But the difference between us and all the companies that we're surrounded by is they've raised hundreds of millions, or in some cases billions of dollars. And we've sort of bootstrapped this thing all the way through and had to really sort of grow internally with what we've had. We haven't had, you know, a big company sort of step in and take a big position. And that's been, you know, a challenge in and of itself. But I think it also has allowed us to be a lot more tactical and a lot more intentional about what we're doing and making sure that our bets that we're placing are right. And it's afforded us the opportunity to continue to grow, which has been really exciting. But I think there is so much that like everybody got wrong in the space. And if I knew today what, you know, if I knew back then what I knew today, it would be a very different place. But That's all part of the journey, I think. And I think the experience that I have from a professional CPG organization, but being able to understand the differences that is cannabis, and a lot of CPG professionals just weren't able to do that. And I think they were so used to either their big budgets or this is how their consumer worked in their history, but really truly understanding the cannabis consumer was something that was lost. And I think something that we've done reasonably well at Decibel, and continue to strive to do in everything that we're planning for.
Yeah. Wow. You've brought up some points there that it makes me question. So, there's always competition at the top spot, right? And a lot would argue you want to be second place most of the time because, holding that pole position for as long as you can is very difficult. You're fighting off predators coming in to try and take market share. You're innovating. How are you segmenting and targeting your consumer? But the one thing that I'm curious is how do you understand new entrants to the industry versus previous consumers? Because you've made a good point that they are drastically different. And even on the heels of, there was some information shared yesterday on LinkedIn that I jumped on to ask about, where's the data source? And it was something about cannabis consumers, at least within Ontario, spend on average $300 a year. And I'm like, what? Like, that's everything. And I wasn't challenging the post necessarily. I was like, I've read Stats Canada, Health Canada, StratCann, even the reports coming in that it's closer to $1,200 a year. So apparently it was due to OCS had done a study on cannabis. What was it, Wes? Canna-cautious individuals. So
Correct.
New entrants. Yep. And 25% of the market was made up of the canna-cautious or the new entrants. And I'm like, I didn't even think it would be that high. Like that's a high number, 25%. If you look at exponential growth and the way that things would factor into play across history, that's a massive number, like 25%, but also $300 a year. I don't know. I would need to challenge it. OCS did provide us some information back, but I am curious, how does Decibel segment and target? Because let's look at GeneralAdmission, for instance. We have access to analytics tools. GeneralAdmission, as far as distribution, we don't get into the sales side of things, but you guys are everywhere and you need to be, right? But I mean, this is, you were kind enough to send over a care pack and I looked at it. I'm like, holy shit, like some of these, like these GeneralAdmission products, they're infused, they're coated in keef. Like these are potent products. Like if I was a new consumer, I wouldn't be looking at those. So how do you guys figure this out? Like, do you have a magic formula to go, new entrants, they want this product, and our previous consumers that were in the market, they want this product? How do you do that?
Yeah, I'll go back to one of my previous points where there was a lot of companies early days who were trying to specifically target that new consumer. And I think we've very intentionally focused our efforts, whether it's with GeneralAdmission or Qwest, in a way that targets the high consumer or the ardent, cannabis consumer. You're right. Our GeneralAdmission infused pre-rolls are not for the faint of heart. That is a 38 to 40% pre-roll. In a single 1 gram joint, you're looking at, upwards of 400 milligrams of THC. That's enough to blow your hair back and give you the scaries for sure. You're not a, experienced consumer. Our sort of thesis around this is, one, we need to be profitable. We need to cash flow. We need to make money, right? I spoke before is that we didn't have the opportunity to raise billions of dollars and be able to sit on a massive cash pile to, make a whole bunch of mistakes. And so we wanted to go to the consumers that were buying cannabis and buying a lot of cannabis. And really the thesis around this is driven by, we think that new cannabis consumers are going to be informed by experienced cannabis consumers on meds, or on average. And that's sort of like the typical experience you get even, during the prohibition dates. Right. And so, yes, most of our products are geared towards that sort of really sort of experienced consumer. But just as we have 90% distillate vapes, 40% infused pre-rolls under GA, we also have edibles that are 2 packs, 5 milligrams a piece. So if you have an experienced consumer who is talking to a canna-curious or canna-cautious, whatever the term was, and they say, "Oh, Tiger Blood, I love that flavor. It's amazing." But, starting off with the Tiger Blood infused pre-roll for a new consumer may not be the best idea,
Yeah.
but
They may never come back to cannabis again if
yeah,
they try that.
they can still get that experience by trying Tiger Blood edibles as an
Right.
example. And so it can kind of pull consumers along. And so, I think we've taken a really long-term view as well. There's, wellness space, there's light dose products. I think you had a guest on, Grant, before, who's sort of pioneering a bit of more lower THC products, which I think you'll start seeing more of over time.
Mm-hmm.
But from a business standpoint, we've really focused on the experienced consumer, the high consumer, and focus there to sort of drive profitability. That gives us the flexibility in the future to plan towards and understand better how the consumer evolves. Because we got to remember that consumers are still so new. I don't even know if we're in the first inning. Like, I feel like we're still in spring training of this whole thing, right? Like, we're 5, 6, 7 years in.
Yeah.
And we're still figuring a lot of things out. Like, even on the manufacturing side and the cultivation side, there just isn't that same level of repeatability, across the whole industry, and that real massive scale that you can have, or that you have. And I think we've done a really good job with what we've done on the manufactured product side from an automation standpoint. Our margins are really good on a relative basis to the industry, but really, I think there's a lot of room to go for the industry as a whole. And so I say all that is that we're still really immature, and I think the consumer is still kind of figuring out what they like as well. And that's why you see so much of this behavior of wanting to try the new thing and always chasing the new. Product life cycles are so short.
Yeah.
There's only a handful of products in this industry that have lasted at the top of the charts for more than a year. We're fortunate enough to have a few of them. Pure Sun Farms Pink Kush is one. The spinach GMO cookies is another one. There's a couple outlier products that have really been able to last, but even really hot selling products, their life cycles are like 6 to 9 months. And so it's really hard to kind of chase that and develop brand when you have consumers who just want to keep trying a whole bunch of new things. So I think the consumer is still figuring itself out. LPs are still figuring themselves out. Retailers are still trying to figure it out. So I think that is why you just don't have a really firmly established number one in really any aspect of the industry at this point, and why it is so fragile. And so back to the kind of the original question of like, how do we think about that new consumer? We're focused on the people who are consuming a lot right now. And really, I think the thought about how we segment consumers and sort of more of those kind of cautious folks, I think comes over time, because there's still lots to figure out. And we're kind of focused on those who spend more money on pot than not.
Yeah. Oh man. Now I'm thinking, this is why even our previous meetings that we've had, you just get my mind just fucking racing about, oh my God, I never thought of that. I never thought of that. The life cycle is very short in this industry, and we've seen it. I mean, I'm no different, right? I want to try. Let me take it back to even when I grew, right? So illicit market, not gray, it was a black market, but you would get, well, what are you growing now? What are you growing now? What do you got? Like, guy, I got the same shit that I've been, like, I'm not changing. I've got 2 different strains. I've got 2 different cultivars. That's what I'm doing. But in this market, with the availability of so much product selection, OCS, they're announcing they're going to whittle back on how many SKUs that they're carrying. And it makes you wonder, okay, well, if you have, let's say we just brought it down to 500, 600 SKUs, the ones that are rotating through there, now you've got an even bigger project on your hands to understand what's selling, what's not selling, or is this for the experienced user that's looking for the high in the economy, the value, right? Versus there's new entrants coming into the market. We need to make sure we satisfy them, because eventually we want to turn them into a loyal customer. But how do you handle that 6 to 9 month life cycle of a product? Like, that's not easy, man.
It's tough, right? And the other challenging thing with where we're at today is the data is not very good, right? We don't have straight from POS data that we can bank on. And yeah, there's lots of data services that sort of pull from POS systems, but it's aggregated and it's a portion that then is used an algorithm to sort of forecast out what the rest of the market does. And the data is getting better. Like the provincial boards are starting to provide a little bit more. OCS has said that they're going to allow LPs to understand where their products are actually going, and to what stores. They're not giving competitive information or anything like that. But just even the quality of the data that's available makes things really difficult. So then on a forecasting basis, it becomes really challenging. And I think we have enough information now to sort of understand and better understand product life cycles, and being a bit more conservative and about how long that they'll actually last, as opposed to historically maybe being a bit more bullish and thinking that they'll actually last longer. And I think different product categories have different cycles. And so there's enough now to sort of really understand it and sort of make some best bets. But again, it's difficult. And if you think about the difference between manufactured products and growing products, we can turn around a new vape in like 2 weeks.
Wow.
That's not hard because distillate is readily available and terpenes are readily available. And so you can turn that really quick. Technically, you actually have to be 2 months because 60 days with the Health Canada and NCP. But theoretically, from conception to market ready, from a manufacturing perspective, you can turn a distillate vape super quick. But let's turn the page and look at flower, for example, the biggest category in the market. If you're telling me today that you want a new strain, talk to me in about 12 months and I can maybe have it ready for you.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And so even with strains that you've got going, and we've just sort of done this big kind of relaunch and reintroduction of Qwest and a big repositioning that we're super excited about, and bringing Qwest flower to more consumers at a more approachable price point. And so we've got we've got a handful of strains running right now, but I've got to make some decisions and provide direction to our cultivation team of what the splits are between strains that we want to commercialize in March of 25. We're in almost August of 24. And so making that bet with not great data, we've just kind of executed this relaunch. It's just starting to come into retail stores in the big provinces, and we've got to make those bets. So it's really, really challenging. And that's why you see a lot of LPs with really big inventories, really big write-offs as well. And now part of that is some weird accounting biological asset model. It's over my head. I'm just a sales guy. I'm like a colors and pictures type of guy. So we're typically not the brightest people around, but it does make up a huge part of it because you have to value the stuff as it's growing and it takes time to grow. So there's a lot of challenges that I don't think the regular consumer would see. I think there's a lot of stuff that gets a lot of noise, like excise tax and marketing and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, those are still massive pieces to the puzzle, but even just trying to predict what you need to produce in 6 months is so difficult because of the life cycle and because of just the realities of this plant.
I'm glad that you're touching on that and being open about it, because I think that's where some brands, and I want to talk about this a bit, but some brands, they just come to market. I've got a good product. I like it. My friends like it. My investors like it. I'm going to package it now and I'm going to get distribution. And then they find out very quickly, oh, fuck, I was really wrong. Like, they're dealing with RTVs, product quality issues in some cases, whatever it might be. There's a plethora of reasons. But they find out very quickly that to be in market is one thing, to be competitive in market and actually see your products moving are completely different. And on that, so what do you attribute to GeneralAdmission's success thus far across? Because it is, we've talked about this. Wes and I talk about this all the time, which is you've got your connoisseurs, right? And the individuals that are like, no fucking way. I want living soil. I want organic. I want small batch. And that's great. Hey, I'm in that category in some cases, right? It's no different than what we see in Bev-Elk. I mean, you're a Bev-Elk dude. You get this, which is craft beers versus readily available Busch Lights and Budweisers and you name it. But you need to, if you're a regular consumer and you are loyal to a certain category and brand even, or parent company, if I travel across Canada and I go into a dispensary, I want to be able to find what I'm used to getting. There are those consumers, and some would argue they don't exist because of the SKU selection. And I call bullshit. I see individuals with the same products time over time. They may vary within the cultivar or strain, or the flavors that they're, experiencing in vapes or whatever. But for the most part, I see a lot of individuals that stick with the same brand because they know that's consistent, it's there, it's available, the pricing isn't all over the place and in flux. So what is it that you would attribute to GeneralAdmission? We'll just talk about GeneralAdmission for a second, and the success, because you are available across Canada for the most part.
Yeah, there's a lot of parts to the success. There's not any one thing. I think starting with the product itself, and I love telling this story because GeneralAdmission was launched not by accident, because it was intentional. And so I talked a little bit about how Wesley and WeGrow came together and merged in 2019, that formed Decibel. And WeGrow had this unbelievable cultivation, team, the genetics, the quality, right out of Creston, which is sort of the heart of BC bud country. And really they put out an amazing flower product. And so when we got together, the focus was really on Qwest, as it rightly should be. And there was a lot of aspirations for it that we have and still do have. But in the Wesley days, we created this brand called GeneralAdmission off to the side because we were building a manufacturing and extraction facility. And so we had a bunch of packaging and vapes, GeneralAdmission. And so the thought was, okay, well, we bought all this packaging and vapes. Let's just put out a few vapes and we'll get it out the door, and then we'll focus on Qwest. And then we were like, okay, well, how do we compete? Because this was like 2020, like late 2020, and everybody had come out with vapes already. All the big boys had come out with their vapes, and we saw it in our shops in Prairie Records.
Yeah.
And, credit to, our leader of Prairie Records at the time, Warren, who is now our chief marketing product officer, but him and the retail team looked at it as like, why are certain vapes selling and some are not? And really just figured out, and then did the crazy thing of just asking the consumer what they liked and actually working behind the till of Prairie Records, which almost all of the executives of Decibel, the C-suite of executives of Decibel, have all done at some point. 3 of the 4 of us came from basically building the retail space to kind of leading the business now. And so it's amazing what happens when you work a till at a retail store. You learn so much, and it's amazing. But what we figured out is if we could be a bit higher on potency, and there's a bunch of different flavors, almost everybody was kind of copying the same thing. Like how many lemon vapes there were out there was like insane. And then we were not the first, but we were one of the first to say, okay, large format might make sense. So 1 gram versus a half gram. And so that's basically how GeneralAdmission got off the ground. Yes, we launched with half grams to start, but we were very quick to move to 1 grams. Our potencies were higher on vapes. We found a way to, in our distillation process, to get north of, around 85%, which at the time was crazy. Most distillate vapes were in like the high 70s. And we came up with like interesting and fun flavors and terpene profiles. And then it kind of just took off. And then we were like, oh, we might have something here. And sort of the rest is history in terms of how GeneralAdmission has approached things. It's been about potency. It's about convenience in terms of ready to consume formats. And we really sort of keyed in on those things. So we weren't necessarily first in the big product categories like distillate vapes, 1 gram distillate vapes, or infused pre-rolls. There was a few who came before, but I think we did it in a way that had the consumer as mind, is that we knew they liked potency. We knew they liked flavor. And some fun along with that, something to relate to. And, picking something a bit different in infused pre-rolls that kind of made them sexy, which was like the keep coating. So the product strategy was really great with GeneralAdmission. And then our kind of commercialization strategy was great too, because I was very, very, very committed to having our own sales team. I saw just about every LP go to sort of an agency model. And when you're in that agency model, I watched reps come into our stores with this binder of stuff. They got like 300 SKUs they're trying to sell, generally more junior sort of sales reps. And I felt bad for them because they're kind of just set up to lose. And it's just, you talk to some of those agencies and you figure out what their model is. And these sales reps have like 15 or 20 different KPIs. They're competing across a whole bunch of different LPs and brands. And then the connectivity between the street and sort of the decision makers within the LP is just not there, because a rep's got to go to their district manager, which then goes to the brand sort of sort of manager, the guy or girl at the agency who then deals with the LP. And then you go from there, and it's like, it's a game of telephone. You have no chance.
God.
Whereas we started out with myself and 3 reps. We had a person in BC, person in Ontario, and person in Alberta. They all reported to me, and we went on the street and we sold. And,
Nice.
slowly but surely, as our sales grew, we just continued to build out the team. We don't have a crazy big sales team. We're about 13 sales reps, including an inside salesperson and customer service. We've got a couple of key account managers. It's not anything crazy. And we scaled up as our business scaled. But the number of times that we've got insights right from the field directly to me and the decision-making group around the products and operations and everything. And like a really simple example is like, we used to have a pretty big business in concentrates, in like shatter and wax. And we just launched shatter in BC. And this is off topic with GeneralAdmission, but I think it kind of tells the point. Gave me a call. He said the parchment paper that we've got in the shatter, it's sticking to the shatter. And so the shatter's like stuck, and that happens a lot. So I called our PD team and I was just like, hey, like, this is what's happening. Can we do something to solve it? They did a bunch of testing, found a wax paper or whatever it was that wouldn't stick. And the next production of that product had the new paper, which was perfect. And so basically from that call to production and getting the slightly revised product out the door was like 2 weeks.
Wow.
And in some organizations that would take like a year to do.
Oh,
Same
for
thing
sure
with
it
like
would.
our innovation cycle is like, once we hit something that works, we can get on top of it and sort of iterate. And we've got a bunch of ideas always in our back pocket. And so that's how we were able to grow our assortment quickly, especially in infused pre-rolls. And then, our manufacturing team as well. I mean, they've gone through a lot of things. I mean, at one point we were hand painting every single joint and then coating them at Keef, away we go. And it's a much more automated process, which has better quality and is a lot more efficient. But gosh, our operations and supply chain team went through it, especially in those 2022 days where we were basically alone in infused pre-roll and owned the category. And so there's not any one thing that led to the success of GeneralAdmission. I think it was the sum of the pieces. And at the end of the day, if I were to say it's one thing, it's how connected the decision makers of Decibel were with what was going on with the consumer at retail. And I think that is completely lost.
Yeah.
Great example is during 2020, March 2020, the pandemic hit, tons of confusion. No one knew what was going on. We had our retail shops that were able to keep open. It was important that they stayed open. I buzzed out from Calgary to Saskatoon to keep our shops open. And I worked at Tills for like 10 days straight, open to close. And the amount that I learned during that time about what the consumer is looking for, how to sell to them, what they're interested in, how they can be moved into different categories or different products. Those 10 days were better than, 10 years in the industry, basically. And that's just kind of one example. And so if I had to distill it down to one thing, it'd probably be that, but it's really it's a huge amount of things across the entire organization to make it happen. And we have great continuity. The folks who are sort of at senior levels, whether it's at the director or, VP or even C-suite level, in an organization, we've mostly been around since almost day one. And so having some of that sort of tribal knowledge, is one of my mentors calls it, in this industry and in this business, has been critical to understand the context and then make decisions that are good for the business and good for the customer.
It makes sense. As you were looking for where do you bring it to one, I was going to say it's that having your ear to the ground and understanding what it truly takes to service your customer and understand and do something with the feedback. One of the areas that we see that I would say larger cannabis companies, not all of them, obviously Decibel is much different, but they're just so disconnected. And it's not that they want to be necessarily, it's just they've got a million things going on. And then you've touched on the agency model where they're struggling, right? They're really struggling. And it's not so much like I had a chance to meet with, it was Brendan, right? Was it Brendan? Brandon?
Yeah. Jonesy.
Yeah. Super knowledgeable. I mean, he knows the products inside and out. And I've met with other individuals from, not all sales agencies are created equally, but I've met with others. And, when I hear, oh, you're representing X, tell me about it. And they give me the highest level superficial shit that I am just not interested in. I want to know about the grows. What type of mediums are you using? What's your team? Tell me about your team, right? I want to understand these things because then I can get behind a brand or a company to truly drive it, or go, yeah, I'm not interested in it. But that's one of the things that I noticed right away. I was like, holy shit, he knows these products inside and out, and he's passionate about them. So I would say that, but coupled with the opportunity to put that feedback into use and being able to pivot that quickly, fucking kudos, man. Like I know companies that have existed a long time that are nimble, but not being able to pivot that quickly. But you're hearing it, right? Some companies would go, fuck, we're not even, if it ever made up, a parchment paper issue, if that even made it back to the manufacturing team or your product development team, chances are they wouldn't even change it in a lot of cases. Like certain companies just won't, they'll ignore it.
Yeah, or not understanding the nuance with cannabis, because cannabis is so nuanced and so frustratingly nuanced sometimes that it just makes, your head explode. But it's those kind of like those little details, right? That can make all the difference in the world, to that consumer. And I think there's a world where you can get too carried away with that as well. And so there is a balance, right? Because you can get just paralyzed with change and always wanting to tweak and tinker and do all that. And so you certainly have to pick your spots of understanding what's a big deal and what's not, and what can move the needle and what doesn't. But I think having that perspective is just so critically important. And, you touched on, meeting up with Jonesy there. And I think that's the other thing, is that we don't have a lot of turnover on our sales team. Sales teams usually turn over quite a bit. But that's the thing, is just, Jonesy's been around, I think he's been in his territory since we created that territory. He's been the only one in it. Most of our team has been with the company for over 2 years, 3 years. So, again, just having that consistency as well, where your team who's representing you out in the field really can speak from a place of knowledge and passion and really, ownership in some ways of the company itself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we do need to give credit, I think, to Warren as well. You talked that he's handling some of the marketing side of things. So, it's not just great products. It's not ensuring that you're speaking with all the retailers. It's also supporting. And one of the things that Decibel does well is ensuring all those peripheral product support options, right? So do you have PK sessions? Do you have the sell sheets? Do you have product knowledge sheets? And hell, do I have displays for my store, which are important? It doesn't mean you need to go overboard with everything, but having it available and ensuring that you're socially active and not responsible necessarily, but socially active. And you've got awareness of your product, because, it's so confined in some cases. We always think, well, it's only the retailers, it's only those within the space, but there are consumers. Consumers will follow, if they picked up a brand they like, I'm going to check this out. I may want to share some feedback, either positive, negative, but they'll start following you and then they'll start engaging. And if you're not active, that's one of the things that we see, and we continue, any of the brands that we work with, is you have to maintain consistency. Make sure you're posting about stuff. Make sure you've got retailer support items, whatever it takes. Make sure that you're doing it. It's the lowest hanging fruit for, as far as we're concerned. And you guys do it well. Let's go on to the cultivation facilities in Qwest, because there's one in particular. I'll just say this right now. So met up with Jonesy, a few different product samples that he was able to provide. But I can tell you something, and for anyone that wants to question large scale cannabis, this PS Cheetah, dude, what the fuck? Like it is Wes, I know we haven't had a chance yet, but I won't get
you
it
save
out
me some
either,
of that. You save me to some of that. Don't be ball guarding that.
I will. Like, seriously, like this is so good. Like so dank, clean finish. Like it is. There was other ones, but I want to focus on this, because if anyone can get their hands on this PS Cheetah by Qwest, wow. Like it's just wow. I mean, the other ones were great. I'm not going to say they weren't, but this one stood out. And as soon as I had opened it, I'm like, oh, that's special. There's something different going on there. I won't get into the terps and the percentages or anything. You have to experience it yourself if you can find it. But tell us about the reasoning behind this kind of relaunch of Qwest, why it's important, but also I want to know which facility is this growing in? Is this in Creston?
Yeah, that specific lot, I'm not sure if it was Creston
Okay.
or Thunderchild. So
Thunderchild.
we've got
Thunderchild. What a cool fucking name too, by the way. Thunderchild facility.
we've got two facilities. So the original We Grow facility is in Creston, BC. A beautiful small craft facility. Rooms are small. Like we're not a massive cultivator. The rooms there are about 900 feet, and then our facility at Thunderchild, the grow rooms are about 1,500 feet, give or take.
Mhm.
And so we're not a mass cultivator. Like we fit well, below the 10,000 kilogram sort of volume that OCS says you're craft or not. If you're under that, we all know there's more to it than that, but we sort of built our reputation on quality around Qwest back in the 2018, 2019, 2020 days. And we've got a really experienced grow team that is really passionate about the product. And I think Qwest, why I say it's a bit of a relaunch is because it's gone through some ups and downs, in cultivation, and this industry is relentless, especially if you're on the premium price side of things. And so
Mhm.
there's some moments for sure where premium flower and premium flower generally has declined like crazy, especially with the prevalence of how much price compression there is. And then also just like the quality levels at the lower price tiers has improved. I mean,
Right.
that we have to, give credit where credit is due, is that there's been a huge advancement in the quality at all sort of price levels. And for consumers who, that 1% who, want to know everything about it, needs to be organic, living soil, what sort of type of oil that the guy who watered the plants puts in his beard, like that level of detail. Yeah, there certainly are those folks, and there's a market for it. But when you look at where all the volume is, it's at those lower price tiers. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I think we've done really well at Decibel is when we've entered categories, we've found an edge.
Mhm.
We're not going to be able to overspend. We're not going to be able to overpower with our, with resources and just like be able to kind of bleed out forever and play that game of attrition. We need things to hit. And so it started with vapes. We found the size format, the potency, the flavor aspect. Then we hit really early with the infused pre-roll in GeneralAdmission, and really love the RTC products, ready to consume products, because you can turn them quickly. Your product life cycles, yeah, they're short, but it doesn't take forever in a day to be able to launch something new, and you can get some scale, and there's really good margin there. And of course, when you're successful in something, you have people invading on your turf, right? They want a piece of that action, so to speak. And uh, we really were built off of what Qwest was. And that gave us a platform to give us credibility to say, okay, why are you trying a new distillate vape? And what's this thing, GeneralAdmission? Um, and so now it's kind of come back around full circle where we were looking for an edge in flower. And I think bringing our quality that you so kindly talked about, and as all the hard work of our fabulous grow team, and bring it to a price point that is a lot more accessible. And I think that is what we've tried to do, is that's our edge, is we're bringing that big quality, that big craft quality that you experience when you're through your nose in the jar, and bringing it to some of those other competitors who have been trying to march on our turf. And I think it's a great edge that we have. And it's funny you said Dank, because in my mind, I've got, more Dank, less bank is sort of a bit of our tagline for this relaunch. And I think it fits really well because we're providing an upsized amount of quality for the price point. And we think it's really exciting for consumers to be able to experience craft flower at craft indoor, well put together flower at prices that you can really only buy, from greenhouses, and sort of that true mass produced product. And
Right.
not that greenhouse product is bad necessarily. It's just when you look at the difference in quality, us versus them, I'll take that challenge all day. And,
Yeah.
and then as we think about, why we're doing this, it's not like we're trading down all these consumers from premium and buying at a lower price. There's just not enough consumers buying at that high price point at this point.
Right.
But what there are is a lot of consumers buying at the very deep discount, way at the bottom. And so if we can pull those consumers up and say, hey, spend $3, $4, $5 more on a half ounce or a quarter, and you get this way better experience. We're going to introduce a lot of people to what true craft product is. And we're really excited about that opportunity.
Yeah. It's wild that you touched on it and said, so I've toured, my days in Ample. I mean, God, 2017 through 19, I was in 50% plus of the facilities. Some of them, our audience probably knows who they are, but 1 million square feet under glass. Decent products. I won't say they're bad products. They're not fit for me. And in my lead up and study of Decibel, when it was, even before meeting with Jonesy, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give it all. I give everything a fair shake, everything. Infused pre-rolls are not my jive. They're not my jam. That's fine. They're good though. I mean, they do hit. For me, it's the experience, and it's that bag appeal. It's the smell. It's the squish it up. Is it bounce back? Is it sticky? Does it give me that styrofoamy tinge in my ear? Like, that little tick you get. And this is craft. Like it's the dankness of it, the smell, the burn, everything is what you would expect. And I can see that, if retailers are smart enough just to, whichever territory you're in and you get this, the rep visiting, make sure you experience the sample. I guarantee that consumers looking at that price point for that product quality, they're going to be like head over heels happy about it. There's just no doubt about it. And I won't get into who I would compare it to, although internally I do, right? But it is right up there, at least and I've only gotten to a couple of them so far, but I think Bubble Bath was the other one that I was like, wow, this is crazy. But you can tell this flower, like, let's not relate Decibel with the big fuck corporate cannabis. I want to get rid of that, because you guys are putting out a premium product at a very good price point. And exactly what you would expect out of certain other craft products, right? I know OCS has is it more than this? Is it less than this? And we've asked craft producers before. I mean, Kevin Varner from Royal Harvest is one of the leading craft producers that loves the product, and his heart and soul goes into it. And he said, what is craft? Craft is the heart that you're putting into it, and the experience you're trying to create for your consumer. It's not this amount or that amount. It is, do you truly believe in the product, and was it cared for? Did all the heart and love go into making this product? And you can tell that with the facility, depending on which one it came from, it certainly did. So I could see how Qwest will have success in the market. But then again, like everything, you're going to be going, oh shit, more people coming in our territory. What are we going to do now? Right. And I think that's one, it keeps you employed, right? It keeps you on your toes as well. But it also gives you these opportunities. I mean, flower's flower, right? At the end of the day, flower's flower. But there's a great divide in between different qualities, different price points, and what makes that up. So what are the advancements? What's the future? Who knows? You guys were cornering the market on, infused and keef coated pre-rolls, right? What's next after that? I don't see moon rocks around very much anymore, right? I don't know. Do you guys have any plans for those by any chance?
Well, I mean, our joints are almost kind of like moon rocks. I mean, obviously it's not, but it is really interesting to kind of see where it goes. Right. And even with having, great quality at a great price point, even within that, there's probably a couple strains that are going to do a lot better than a couple others. Right.
Sure.
And if all else is equal, the potency is there, the terpenes, so the numbers on the label, it can be for no reason at all, or some specific reason why one does better than the other. And so, trying to figure that out is always the challenge, and being really close to it. But again, going back to how we learn, if you look at the jar, I hope it's on there, so I don't put my foot out, there should be a sticker on there with a QR code. And when we do sample, we want the feedback, right? And we're so excited now that a lot of the government boards have allowed for sampling in a compliant way. And that's the best way to kind of put, your money where your mouth is in a lot of respects. But again, how we're doing it is, yes, we want to celebrate our product, but we're not just going to shove it in a bag and hope for the best. Is the favor that we got to ask everybody is, hey, super pumped to give you this sample. Would you mind just telling us what you think?
Yeah.
If you hated it, tell us. If you loved it, tell us. If you were indifferent, tell us that too. And that's how we get better. And that's how cannabis brands and companies can get better, is sort of listening and understanding and learning a lot more, even just like with our approach to how we approach retailers and the independent retailers versus kind of the big chains. It takes different ways to, make sure that you're successful. And I think taking that extra time is so important. And I think, again, we don't know necessarily, or I don't have for you today exactly what the next big thing is, but by putting a bunch of puzzle pieces together and being close to it and listening and truly listening, I think that's how you find out what the next great thing is going to be, and take some shots at it.
Yeah, definitely. How do you find the feedback? So I remember even, if I were growing a new strain, you distribute to friends and, friendlies. There was never, hey, that was great. It's always reaching out. Hey, what did you think of that? Does it need this? Is it potent enough? Whatever. Do you find, so one, Wes and I, if you've tuned into the show, obviously we're huge on sampling, compliant sampling, but what we want to see more of is the actual feedback. So companies like yourself, you're putting it out there, you've got a QR, and believe me, I'm going to share feedback, but are you seeing the feedback come in? Because that's what we're asking. We're asking all retailers, bud tenders, et cetera. And when you're receiving these samples, if you have the ability or the means to provide feedback, you can't complain about a product or the market in general if you're not voicing your opinion on the products that are in the market. So do you, as Decibel, do you see that feedback coming in, or do you need to see more? Is it, hit and miss?
Look, we'd always like to see more. On this round, as we've just gotten our flowers sort of repositioned and inventory available, and it's starting to flow out there, we've kind of gone through this big sampling program. So lots of bud tenders and retailers have received jars similar to what you have. And I think we've had over 150 or so respondents to the survey, which is excellent.
Nice.
And one of the perks or downfalls, depending on how you look at it, is when you get to a certain size, you are going to get feedback. And you are certainly going to get feedback. Not all of it is good. I by rule, I don't have Reddit on my phone. I don't look at Reddit. I don't have a Reddit account just because it's tough for my own mental health.
So hard.
But that's not the only place it comes from. And I think the first place is you just got to ask the question, right? And actually do that. But then there's also tools to get it at scale. And that's why with every sampling program that we'll have, and admittedly, I think this Qwest survey might be a touch long. There's some unneeded stuff in it. It will still only take 3 or 4 minutes, but we want to do something that you can do like within a minute. Every sample that we'll be giving out will have a QR code to get that feedback. So we can actually have over time hundreds or thousands of pieces of feedback over the course of a year. When you're compliantly sampling, just asking for that extra touch is important. But you can also do that with retailers as well. So lots of retailers, have their own sort of sampling program or process, or LMS systems that can provide you that feedback. You just have to be you have to be willing to ask for it. Make sure it comes back to you in a way that you can actually do something about it.
Right.
But there certainly is a lot of it, mining through sort of what is maybe just a hater versus sort of the true nature of it. But the other thing, and this is like, again, a small nuance, is on the back of every package of product that goes out our doors, you have to have an email and phone number, right? And so we have a customer service person who answers those calls and emails. I have that inbox in my own. I am able to look through, same with, so I talked about Warren before, our head of product development and marketing. We look at that inbox every single day and see what people are writing into us. We have a feedback form on our GeneralAdmission website. I think actually on our Qwest website too, where we get that, and it all pumps back to us. And so we're looking for those things and actually truly looking at it. We look at our complaint data that we get back from the OCS, and we've done a whole bunch of work on that. We had some issues, admittedly, with our GeneralAdmission pre-rolls, where there was a period of time that production from kind of call it December to January, February, we had a bunch of mashed up joints and they were coming crooked or they were loose or they just weren't the presentation that we were known for. And there's a huge piece of work done to figure out why that was happening, figured out what was happening. It's funny. It was a very kind of a simple thing in the end. But when you look at that and then you track the data and that we have that we can control ourselves, but also that comes back from various sources, whether it's the boards or those emails or whatever, we can see the improvement and it's never as quick as you'd like it to be. There's usually a 2 or 3 month lag, but still all of those things are so important. And so we never preach that we're going to be perfect because that's impossible, especially in this industry, but in anywhere. But it's what you do when you're not. And it's amazing the feedback. And I've responded to a bunch of consumers over the years myself. I was actually manning the actual inbox myself and managing consumer complaints for a period of time a couple of years ago until naturally it just didn't make sense for me to do. But people were shocked that we'd actually get back to them. And some LPs aren't even responding.
Oh yeah,
some
don't
there's a
respond
couple
at all.
examples of consumers who they must have just had a bad day or what it was, and they just let a rip on email. Like, it was scathing. But then you respond back and say, you know what? That sucks. That's not what we wanted you to have. That's not the experience. Here's what we can do for you. And if anything else comes up, here's my personal email address. You can get back to me. And it's amazing how some of the most crazy negative things can be turned into, hey, you've got a customer for life because you actually took the time.
Yeah.
And I think people realize that you're human. And I think that's also a bit of the disconnect of this like corporate faceless, organization is if you have companies that aren't even responding or have a generic email back that basically blows them off, why are people going to want to engage with that? Right.
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
Again, it's those little pieces and it takes a bit of time, but not much. And
but
it also gives you a sense of what
important.
people are saying.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, Wes longer than I, but this is at an executive level, dealt with customer support, customer care. And it speaks volumes about a company of how you treat a customer when you've done wrong versus always doing right. Right. And that's what we see. So, it's no different than people love negativity. It's human nature. They love to be and so what you'll see in the Reddits and some of these other, comments, we find Instagram is positive, cheery, where you go to Reddit, you go to some, X, for instance, and some of these other areas is if they're having a bad day or they've had a bad product experience, they're going to share it. And typically, bad news and whatnot, that gets shared more readily than anything else, whether it was a negative experience, and it may get blown out of proportion in a lot of cases. But the fact that you're willing to, because Wes and I've seen this, I mean, we've been doing what we do within High Flyer Media and Legacies now for a year. We talk to a lot of brands, we do a lot of research, and we know which ones respond and which ones don't. For any of our brand partners, we usually give them a heads up. Hey, they're going off about you over here on Reddit. Here's the thread. Do you want to step in? And in a lot of cases, ours will, the brand partners, they understand and we'll coach them sometimes. But in other cases, we see where it's just misery loves company. And as soon as you get one negative comment, there's a thread of 25. And now you've got 25. 25 customers is huge. I don't care what one is important, but 25 customers or now lack of customers because they're just not going to go back to the product itself. But if an individual like yourself or a company like yourself that steps in, I get why you don't want to be in Reddit. I'm not trying to convince you to go to Reddit, but doing some damage control, and not even damage control, correcting a wrong or righting a wrong, that speaks volumes. And we've seen it personally time and time again where you get a consumer, they go off negative, people chime in, the brand steps in, and people are just like, holy shit, well, thank you. Thank you. At least you said something. So, and it's no different than I send you an email, I call you, I leave you a voicemail. Hey, I was happy or not happy. Typically, you're going to deal with the not happy and try to figure out some sort of resolve to bring them back one more time. Give us one more chance. That's all we ever ask, right? If we fail, give us one more chance. And we promise that we'll make it right. Glad that Decibel is understanding that. And it sounds like a lot of that is driven from you, but also the founders in the company, the makeup. You guys have spent time behind tills, right? You know what it's like. You know what consumers can be like. Bad product recommendation. you're going to get some tarnish.
I
That's for sure.
I do have, sorry, one quick question for you myself, Adam, in regards to feedback and stuff. You know, distillate has been mentioned a lot in this call. We've talked about it a little bit. And I think there's a subsection of specifically, I think the Reddit community is fairly vocal. There seems to be a lot of them fairly vocal about not wanting to touch distillate products, right? There seems to be a stigma towards those types of products. And, you know, I was wondering what your message would be to those types of customers. And I say that too because the stuff I notice with distillate related complaints when I've seen those on Reddits or forums or whatever it seems to be, for the most part, just a kind of fuck distillate attitude with no real, I've yet to personally see any real full explanation as to why they feel that way, right? There have been a couple, but I'd just be interested to hear what your thoughts are on and what your message would ideally be to those customers on why, you know, why it might not be the case, right?
Yeah, love this question. Love talking about distillate. Honestly, I feel like I have a lot of experience with it, both in this world and in actually my previous life as well. And I'll kind of explain that. But a lot of what I've seen, one of my favorites is calling distillate hot dog water. And they call it hot dog water because, you know, you don't have to necessarily care about your inputs unless you're really focused on yield to get the output that you're looking for. And so what I'd say is like making really good, clean distillate is actually really hard. And making average kind of like okay distillate is really easy. But I'll go back into the beer world for a quick second. In the craft beer world, lager is almost like a 4-letter word. But if you go to any craft brewer and say, what is the hardest beer to make? It is a clean, crisp lager. Because you can't pop the shit out of it to cover up all your mistakes that you made in the brewing process. And so for those, you know, out there who are trying to say, oh, this is a sativa distillate, it's an indica distillate, it means they don't understand the actual product itself. And so I think there's some misconceptions around there about what distillate is. Distillate is basically it's a raw material in a lot of ways, but to make it really well, really clean, highly, highly potent, free of basically everything else in the plant, you're really just looking for either like THC or some of the minor cannabinoids. You're not looking to have fats and lipids in there. You're not looking to have terpenes in there because the distillate becomes a carrier for the terpenes that you're going to reintroduce into the product. So to make a really good distillate vape with botanical terpenes, to have it express itself the way that you're sort of designing it, you have to have really good, clean distillate. And that's harder to do than making average distillate. And so I think for those who love to dunk on distillate, that just means it's not a product for you. If you like drinking IPAs because you love that really hoppy, intense, bitter beer, that's great. But there's so many people who want something with less flavor that's more refreshing, and maybe it's, you know what I mean? So I think it becomes consumer preference. And the reality is that there's a lot of consumers out there who maybe don't necessarily like the taste of weed, but they like smoking weed, they like the effect and everything. And so there's a place for craft beer, just like there's a place for White Claws, right? And I think one of the things that the ardent sort of purist cannabis people get caught up in is that we don't want those consumers. It's like, well, why not? Because they're helping build this industry into a thing that everybody dreamed of 10 years ago, right? Just because they don't happen to like the same products as you doesn't mean that it's not the right product for them. And so while I'm obviously biased because we bought a lot of distillate products and it's a big part of our business, I think what we're doing is providing products to consumers that are enjoyable, that either taste good or have that great effect that they're looking for. And yeah, sure, some of them might migrate over and say, oh, what's live resin all about? Or, what is live rosin or a solventless, and go all the way deep down there. And if they do, that's great because those are premium products and that's actually great for the industry as a whole and people's understanding. But as an entry point, we talked about sort of the canna cautious or, the infrequent cannabis user. Why is it not okay for them to have something that might be somewhat familiar to them? Or to have something that they actually kind of really enjoy. And if they enjoy the effect, they enjoy the flavor, I just don't see anything wrong with it. And I think that's good for the industry of having very marketable, more mass appeal products. And I think that's what distillate can do, because it's a blank canvas. And again, I think making really good distillate is really hard. I think making average distillate is really easy. And so I think that's where I think there's a bit of a disconnect. But in the end, I think we're trying to create products that consumers love, that have mass appeal, so more people are willing to buy them. And I've always kind of had that point of view, and I think that's what has helped them make us relatively successful.
How's that, Wes?
Great.
You understand it now.
Perfect. Yeah. Love it.
You brought up great points that I never really thought about. And, I remember the early days of distillate, and this was still black market days. It was, everyone was going off about, look, I got distillate. It's 60+% THC. Look, I'm going to add this to my bowl, and I'm going to smoke this, and I'm going to get really ripped. And then time matures, different things happen, bubble hash and, live resins and rosins and butters and waxes and shatters. And there's still the individual that, it could be a cookie that tastes like weed. I don't want weed. That's what they'll say. Okay, well then how about distillate? And you brought up a good point, is that not all distillate is created equal. That 100% I can attest to. If you're having experience with distillate that you're getting headaches from, chances are it's a pretty shitty distillate if you haven't figured that out already. But no, you spoke to that very well. And I'm sure that for our audience that is listening, they'll understand this now. But the biggest point is, not everything is for everyone. And, and one of the things that now I'm thinking about, thanks a lot, you probably ruined something for me, Adam, is using the hoppiness of craft beers to cover shitty processes. I never thought of that, right? Because a lot of craft beers are super hoppy. Some of the IPAs very, very hoppy. And now I'm going to be questioning, how well was their process of brewing this? I don't know. Anyways. So Adam, you're familiar with the show. I'm not sure if we had started on any of the ones that you've seen, but what we've been doing is we pose a question from last week's guest, and then you get to pose one to the next incoming guest. Wes, I know we've got a bit of a chain of question going on.
It's a chain.
We're going to see if we can break it with Adam's question, but it's very relevant, I think, for you, Adam. So Wes, take it away.
Yeah. So about 3 weeks ago now, we had Jonathan Wilson of Crystal Cure on, and he was talking a lot about, a lot of LPs and retailers are expressing their opinions on or concerns on LinkedIn and things like that about many of the different issues with the industry, right? Marketing regulations are the problem. Excise tax is the problem. All these different individual pieces. And Jonathan had made a point of, we need to get out of our echo chamber, and, some of the biggest headways made in other industries such as dairy and beer when they had similar issues was to get the consumer involved and get them advocating for the same things so that the government really takes notice and we can really affect change. But part of that is providing a united message from the LPs and from the retailers in order to sing true to the consumer so that they can echo that, right? Then last week we had Alexander Poulin on from Jubilee, and his kind of question chained off of that. And what are you doing, or what do you think you could be doing, either yourself or as Decibel, to help inform the consumer about the issues within the industry to kind of affect that change, right? Hopefully that makes sense.
It does. It's a very good question. So just to repeat back, so what can an LP do, for example, Decibel, to help influence the consumer or educate them about the issues that the industry has? Is that essentially the question?
Right, because what they were kind of saying is that why does the consumer care right now? They don't really have a reason to care. And, what is that issue that they should be caring about that is affecting them, and how do we let them know that to instill that change?
That is a damn good question. Huh. I mean, the most drastic thing would be if the whole thing goes away. If all of a sudden they can't go into a store and buy whatever they want and have an assortment of 400 or 500, 600 different products to choose from. But that's obviously not practical and not something I'm advocating for, because I want to stick around and see this thing through. But in terms of like what would really take notice would be that. I think you're going to start seeing some of that, where some consumers' favorite brands and companies are going to go away, and that's kind of the nature of the beast. I think where my mind actually went to is, when you fill up gas, I don't know if it's there anymore, but there used to be this like chart that said, this is how much per liter is going to these different
Oh
places.
yeah. Yeah.
Something as simple as that. And I did this math because we weren't happy with the OCS's decision to increase the markup on pre-rolls and infused pre-rolls when they did that big change in September of last year. And the rationale infuriated us even further, where they said that there is enough automation and scale that you can produce them more efficiently, and so it can handle a higher markup. Didn't like that because the OCS would be able to basically profit off of the investment of private industry. That didn't make a lot of sense to me, but we put together a chart, and it was a very simple chart, and it showed that for every $1 that a consumer pays on a GeneralAdmission infused pre-roll, 76 cents of that dollar goes to the government in some form. If we had that on the label or at the till, just reminding the consumer of like, hey, 3-pack infused pre-roll from GeneralAdmission is going to run you between $25 and $30, depending on where you're at. Give or take, you're $7 to $10 a joint out the door. If they knew that of that, 76% of it is going to the government in some way, and then what are they getting for that? Considering there's cost of living and there's a whole bunch of macroeconomic themes that are going on right now, that might help. And sort of just illustrating that in a very simple way. And I just thought of that because of the gas station example, that could help. And I think there also needs to be a united industry front. And I don't think we necessarily have that. I think there's alignment more or less on the issues. I don't know if there's full alignment necessarily between retailers and LPs. But I think there needs to be an aligned voice, which is really difficult because it's very competitive. And you don't have those sort of industry groups. And yes, there are Canadian Council Cannabis C3 is we're part of and does a lot of great work. But I think from a consumer perspective, that might be helpful.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that the general consensus is that we need to make the consumer aware, and it starts with just awareness. And you've touched on one that will certainly at least ignite the fire with consumers, because we're already seeing this. I mean, there was a report that came out yesterday, the day before, that shows that the combined amount we as Canadians spend on housing, groceries, et cetera, cost of living, we're paying more in taxes. We're paying more in taxes than just that. So as simple as that sounds, I think that could potentially be one of the most effective things that we could do. We'll be calling on you, Adam. So
I'm here for it.
So now it's your turn to pose a question to next week's guest.
Do I get to know who it is or what their field is?
No, you don't get to know any of that. Yeah, that's the hardest part. It's also what makes it most challenging and fun, I think, too.
Gotcha. Are they experienced in the industry? Have they been in the industry for a while?
I can't tell you. It doesn't even need to be an industry question. You're flying blind, baby. It's like entering the cannabis industry.
I'll give you an example of a question someone had asked previously that was not even really industry related. And it was simply, what was the best piece of feedback you received both professionally and personally that's helped you the most, right? So your question doesn't have to be industry specific. It can be whatever you want.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'm going to do a bit of it could potentially be both. If you could transport yourself back to when you started in the industry, knowing what you know today back then, what's the one thing that you would do differently?
Great question.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Well, Adam, we appreciate you being on Legacies and being so very open about Decibel and the form up of the company and where the Qwest products are coming from, because man, you got some winners in there. I can tell you that much. But we do appreciate you joining us on Legacies. It's been an awesome, hour and a half.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's great to chop it up with people in the industry who have great perspective like you guys do, and just happy to spend the time. It's a great way to spend an hour and a half on a Wednesday afternoon. It's not my regular, so it's fun. It's a good change of pace, let's say.
Nice. Well, we're
Nice.
glad we could bring that to you. But we do appreciate you coming on, and continued success. I know that you'll see it, and we're here to support. So thank you so much, man.
Appreciate it, guys.
All righty. Well, that was a good conversation, man. I know it was very businessy in this case. Would I say
Yeah.
businessy? Really just understanding the larger, I don't even want to say larger because, technically Decibel is craft, like they have craft grows, but
Well, no, it's a good word because I think it's what some in the community view them as, right? Like you said, they view them as that corporate, and it's
Yeah.
nice to put a face to things and put reasoning behind things and hear their methodologies. Specifically, I really enjoy, me from the customer support side of things.
Yeah.
I loved hearing that those founders, most of the guys in the C-suite, guys and women in the C-suite who started with the companies were on the tills and were in the registers talking to customers, during those days. I think that's awesome to hear.
It's important. Well, I think
yeah.
it contributes to their success so far, right? And I will say this because I know that we've got some OG legacy types that are living soil, organic. Try the Qwest PS Cheetah. That's all I'll say. And you can personally send me a DM if you do try it. You don't have to go anywhere else with it. Just let me know what you think. You know me. I don't blow smoke.
Or better yet, use that goddamn QR code like Adam
use
said.
that. Well, I'm going to use the
feedback.
QR code, but most certainly if you get your hands on the product and there's a sample as a retailer, please retailers be providing the feedback. You can't complain about products in market if you're not providing feedback. It doesn't make any sense. But this went off well. I mean, I was concerned at first. You're like, I'm going to be in Virginia. I'm going to record from down here. I'm like, do you have internet? Is it dial up? But it wasn't. You just got your dad's Starlink established.
Yeah, I'll do a quick shout out to Starlink from SpaceX. So thank you very much because I came down here. We installed Starlink. We had a cherry picker. We got up on the roof, installed the satellite, and I even had my own concerns. I was like, I don't know, doing a live, not live, but recording a podcast remotely like this and with 3 or 4 1080p cameras and all that stuff. I was very concerned that it was not going to go well.
It handled it.
Had nothing but, solid streams. I haven't had any pixelation, and it's been honestly. I also found out I was playing through the settings, and if it snows and that thing gets covered in snow, it's got its own setting to heat itself up, to melt the snow off. It's fucking unbelievable.
Okay, so I still, way back in the Bell satellite internet days, I had, it was light, wet snow, covered the dish, no reception, no nothing. I go out, I step on the air conditioner to get up to brush it off. I still have an indent on my shin. I smashed it so fucking hard. Elon, you're a fucking genius. Absolutely genius. That is smart. Wow. Continue to conquer, bringing down dictators in Venezuela. Looking forward to a fight there potentially. Do you see that? Elon may be fighting this dictator. Yeah. Good luck, buddy.
With his space lasers?
Yeah. That guy is fucking Tony Stark as far as I'm concerned. But anyways, I'm glad that it went off well. Your connectivity was probably better than mine. You got Starlink down there. But looking forward to having you back. And then, Lake and Bake is coming up real soon. So make sure you get your rest after the big drive.
Will do. Yeah, driving back tomorrow. Good 8 hours. But it should be fun.
All righty. Well, thanks for joining Legacies, everyone. We hope you have a great week and we'll see you next time.